So today, we're doing something that I think is going to be incredibly validating for a lot of you. We are literally tearing down the scaffolding behind a deeply misunderstood habit. Why we talk to ourselves when we're stressed. If you've ever paused and wondered what is actually going on in your brain during those moments, well, you are exactly in the right place. I am so excited to guide you through this because it turns out there's this hidden, brilliant architecture to all that private chatter.
All right, let's just dive right into it with a scenario. Picture this, okay? You're pacing your kitchen, or I don't know, maybe you're sitting alone in a parking garage. You are caught in a full-blown conversation with yourself, literally narrating your to-do list out loud to an empty room. And then, bam, you realize someone is watching you, right? You panic, you quickly grab your phone, you pretend you're on a call, and you feel that hot, awful wave of social embarrassment just wash right over you. Come on, we have all been there.
And honestly, that brilliantly illustrates our very first big takeaway, which should bring you an instant hit of relief. Here is the absolute truth. You aren't crazy, and you certainly aren't alone. In fact, as we're going to explore throughout this explainer, that habit of narrating your thoughts, it might actually be proof that your brain is working in a way that is quite brilliant. We really need to stop viewing this as some embarrassing flaw and start recognizing it as the cognitive feature it actually is.
So, Section 1, the self-talk stigma.
We really need to dismantle this societal assumption that narrating out loud is just this, weird quirk. Society constantly tells us that language is strictly for communicating with other people. But for a lot of us, words are actually a tool for thinking. When the world feels entirely too loud, talking to yourself isn't a flawed way of communicating at all. It's a highly sophisticated form of emotional regulation. It's a mechanism that keeps you steady. Basically, you're using language to build a bridge right over your own mental chaos.
Moving on to Section 2, the hardware of private speech. Let's look at the neurological mechanics. To truly understand why we do this, we kind of have to look under the hood at the basic mechanics. And the crucial point here is the clinical definition. In psychology, talking to yourself is technically called private speech. I want you to remember that term. It instantly removes the stigma, doesn't it? It's a well-documented psychological tool for cognitive self-regulation, meaning you are regulating yourself. You aren't losing control. You are actively taking control of your cognitive state. Think of your brain like a seesaw. On one side, you've got the amygdala. That's your brain's threat detector. On the other side, the executive function, your logic center. Now, when you are under a heavy load of stress, the amygdala fires up and it starts to override your logical thinking. You just feel completely overwhelmed. But by saying your thoughts out loud, you are forcing your brain to process that information completely differently than if you just kept it quietly inside. You're taking all those tangled, messy emotions and actively shifting them into the executive function part of your brain. You are literally organizing your reality in real time just by using your voice. Which brings us to Section 3, the analytical mind and auditory anchors. Let's look at why specific types of minds rely so heavily on this tool. For a lot of analytical outsiders and people with high IQs, the mind moves incredibly fast. It prioritizes abstract thinking so heavily that it actually runs the risk of getting lost in its own complexity. And that is exactly why you require an auditory anchor. When you're facing a complex puzzle, you start to narrate the steps out loud to tether your thoughts back to reality. It acts as a mastery experience. You are essentially acting as your own coach, guiding yourself through the uncertainty, step by step, until the situation feels handleable again. It is high-level problem-solving in action. Section 4, traumatic intelligence and its emotional roots. We need to slow down for just a second here because there's often a much deeper emotional root to this behavior. And you might even recognize pieces of your own childhood in this. For many, this habit stems from growing up in unpredictable environments. If you were forced to constantly read the room or solve adult problems way before you were ready, your developing brain had to adapt. It became hyper-attuned to meaning. You learned to narrate your internal experience with this intense level of analysis just to make sense of things around you that were often, completely senseless. You were building a narrative structure for safety. I just want to pause for a second and let this heavy, honestly deeply poetic concept from our source material sink in. As an adult, talking to yourself is how you continue that search for meaning. It's how you, quote, echo your own existence in a room where you might have once felt unheard. Wow, it's a profound realization, right? Your private speech is literally a continuation of your resilience. All right, Section 5, taking back control. Let's look at some practical application. So, how do we actually use this knowledge today? Well, we all know the Tuesday afternoon crisis. You're sitting at your desk, Maybe you're replaying an incredibly awkward conversation from 3 years ago, or you're deeply catastrophizing about a meeting that hasn't even happened yet. It's just an ordinary Tuesday, but internally, the alarms are absolutely blaring. Here's exactly what's happening in that moment, and more importantly, what you can do about it. Step 1, your brain is running these high-speed simulations of absolutely everything that could go wrong. It's a runaway train. Step 2 is where you intervene. You speak the steps out loud. You literally say, okay, first I'm going to do this, then I'll handle that. And step 3 is the biological result of that simple action. You successfully reduce activity in your brain's fear center. Boom. Just by organizing the steps verbally, you halt the simulation entirely.
In the world of psychology, this actionable technique is beautifully summarized as name it to tame it. By putting those abstract, spiraling fears into concrete words, you are taking the remote control right back from your anxiety. You step out of the role of the passive worrier, and you become the active narrator of your own life once again. So the next time you catch yourself talking through a complex problem right in the middle of the grocery store aisle, please do not shrink back in shame. Remind yourself that you aren't broken. You just have a mind that takes the question, what is happening right now, extremely seriously. You're brilliantly utilizing the tools you have to create a sanctuary of clarity in a world that is just completely obsessed with noise. Now, if you're looking for a way to actively turn down the volume of that internal noise and start building better daily habits, definitely check out the resources linked in the description. There's a fantastic bundle of 7-day guides and planners specifically designed for things like overthinking, focus, and really rebalancing your nervous system. And hey, if you're finding this explainer helpful, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the fascinating architecture of human behavior. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought pulled from our community prompt. Are you a narrator? Someone who lists their to-dos out loud as they go? Or are you more of a shower rehearser, practicing arguments before they even happen? Whichever you are, ask yourself, what is your inner world trying to tell you right now? Sharing these habits helps us realize that our so-called weird traits are really just our brain's way of keeping us whole. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Remember, your inner world is absolutely worth paying attention to. Stay curious.